Mercedes could lose half a second per lap before the season even starts. Not because of a crash. Not because of reliability. But because the FIA has called an emergency Wednesday meeting in Bahrain that could declare their 2026 engine illegal overnight. We are talking about a potential 40 horsepower swing, a 72-hour deadline, and a legal threat from Ferrari and Red Bull that could freeze Mercedes on track the moment testing resumes. If the ruling goes against them, Mercedes may be forced to rip apart the very core of their power unit days before the new era begins. And if the FIA allows it, the sport could explode into a legal war before the first race. This is not a rumor anymore. This is an official meeting, behind closed doors, with the future of the regulation era at stake. And there is one technical detail inside that engine, a microscopic change measured in microns, that could decide the entire championship before a single point is scored. Stay with me, because what happens on Wednesday could permanently change Formula One. The emergency meeting did not come out of nowhere. It was triggered. And the trigger was fear. Fear inside rival garages that Mercedes has discovered something others missed. During the first days of Bahrain testing, engineers started noticing something unusual in the data. Not just lap times. Those can be masked. Fuel loads can be hidden. Engine modes can be disguised. But acceleration traces do not lie. On corner exit, the Mercedes-powered cars showed a sharp torque spike. Short, violent, almost electric in delivery. But this is the new era. Electrical output is tightly controlled and standardized. So where is that extra push coming from? That question started circulating quietly. Then Ferrari began digging deeper. Then Red Bull followed. And what they believe they found is not a conventional performance upgrade. It is a structural advantage. Something built into the heart of the engine itself. This is where compression becomes the center of the storm. Under the 2026 regulations, the maximum compression ratio is capped at 16:1. That number is not random. It exists to protect reliability, reduce detonation risk with sustainable fuels, and most importantly, prevent expensive development wars. 16:1 is the ceiling. Clear. Simple. Or at least it seemed that way. Because the regulation defines the compression limit geometrically. Measured in static conditions. Measured cold. Measured in scrutineering. And Mercedes, officially, complies. Every inspection. Every test. Perfectly legal. But here is the uncomfortable detail. The rule specifies the geometric ratio. It does not explicitly define the dynamic ratio under full thermal load. And this is where the theory becomes explosive. Mercedes is believed to have engineered pistons using an advanced alloy with a highly aggressive thermal expansion coefficient. When cold, everything fits perfectly within the 16:1 geometry. When hot, under race conditions, microscopic vertical expansion changes the effective combustion chamber volume. Tiny differences. Measured in microns. But in an engine, microns matter. Those microns reduce chamber space at top dead center. Which means the real compression ratio during operation could rise dramatically. Not visibly. Not permanently. But enough. Enough to extract more energy from the fuel. Enough to increase thermal efficiency. Enough to produce an estimated 15 to 40 additional horsepower. And that number is terrifying in this formula. Because in a tightly regulated power unit era, 10 horsepower can define a championship. Now imagine double that. Or more. And here is the brilliance. When the engine cools, the components contract. Back to their original shape. Back to compliance. By the time the FIA inspects the unit after a run, everything appears normal. 16:1. On paper. Which creates the biggest dilemma of all. Is it illegal? Or is it simply intelligent interpretation? And that is exactly what the FIA must decide on Wednesday. But there is something even more dangerous beneath this. Because if Mercedes has truly unlocked a dynamic compression advantage, it is not just about horsepower. It is about fuel efficiency. Higher compression extracts more work per combustion cycle. Which means less fuel required to complete race distance. Less fuel means less starting weight. Less weight means faster lap times from the very first corner. It compounds. Power. Efficiency. Weight advantage. Corner exit torque. And suddenly the performance gain is not linear. It is exponential. And this is why Ferrari and Red Bull are not treating this as a minor clarification. They see it as a fundamental imbalance. A potential distortion of the entire competitive order before the first race even happens. But that is only half the story. Because compression is not the only accusation on the table. And the second allegation may be even harder to defend. We will get to that. Because the fuel flow data might be the real smoking gun. But the compression theory, as controversial as it sounds, is not the only reason this crisis exploded. Because Red Bull did not walk into the FIA meeting empty-handed. They came with telemetry. And not the kind that is easy to dismiss. According to sources inside the paddock, Red Bull engineers began analyzing acoustic signatures from onboard recordings. Not just speed traces. Not just throttle maps. But the actual sound profile of combustion events under acceleration. And what they claim to have detected is irregular fuel pressure behavior during corner exit phases. Short bursts. Extremely brief. Measured in milliseconds. Almost impossible to catch in traditional sampling intervals. Here is why that matters. Under the 2026 rules, fuel flow is strictly capped at 100 kilograms per hour. That number is monitored by a standardized FIA sensor. It measures fuel passing through the system at defined intervals. But sensors do not read continuously. They sample. And sampling creates micro windows. Windows that, if exploited, could allow tiny pulses of higher flow between measurement points. Now imagine this scenario. Instead of delivering fuel at a perfectly flat rate, the injector system vibrates at a high frequency, creating pressure packets, microsurges, each one incredibly short, each one technically invisible to average interval detection. But combined, they could provide a measurable torque boost at the exact moment the driver hits the throttle. Out of slow corners, out of hairpins, where traction and instant power define lap time. If true, that would explain the sharp acceleration spike seen in Bahrain. Not sustained illegal flow, but tactical microbursts. Enough to feel it. Enough to see it in sector analysis. Hard to prove. Even harder to regulate. And this is where the situation becomes explosive. Because if Mercedes is combining a dynamic compression advantage with micro fuel pressure optimization, then we are not talking about a small edge. We are talking about systemic superiority. Engine efficiency. Instant torque. Lower fuel weight. Cleaner combustion. All layered together. And that is why Ferrari reportedly delivered a detailed dossier to the FIA, including exhaust gas spectrographic analysis, high-resolution audio comparisons, combustion frequency anomalies that, according to their engineers, are impossible to achieve at a fixed 16:1 ratio. This is not speculation. This is data versus interpretation. And here is what makes Wednesday terrifying for the FIA. If they declare Mercedes illegal, they must explain precisely which element violates the written regulation. Dynamic expansion? Fuel pressure pulses? Both? Because Mercedes' defense is simple. Show us the rule we broke. Toto Wolff is said to be absolutely firm on one principle. If the rule defines geometry at inspection temperature, and the car complies at inspection, then it is legal. If the fuel sensor does not detect a breach, then it is legal. Innovation within boundaries. That will be the argument. And they are prepared to take it further. Because internally, Mercedes believes they consulted the FIA months ago about material expansion behavior. They believe they operated in transparency. Which means if the engine is banned now, days before the season, it opens the door to legal escalation. Not sporting protest. Courtroom action. And that possibility changes the entire atmosphere. Because the FIA is not just judging a power unit. They are protecting the stability of the sport. A ban creates chaos. A green light creates outrage. Either way, someone loses. And here is the part almost nobody is discussing. If Mercedes is forced to redesign within 72 hours, they will not only lose performance. They may lose reliability completely. These engines are not modular toys. They are precision systems built around specific combustion pressures. Change piston material. Change vibration behavior. Change thermal profile. And suddenly the crankshaft dynamics shift. Bearings experience new loads. Turbo efficiency recalibrates. One modification cascades into 10 consequences. So when people say, just swap the pistons, they underestimate what that really means. It could turn a title contender into a midfield survivor overnight. And if that happens before the first race of a brand new regulation cycle, the psychological damage alone could be enormous. Confidence shattered. Momentum broken. Narrative rewritten. But here is where the story goes even deeper. Because this is not just about 2026. It is about precedent. If the FIA allows this interpretation, every manufacturer will immediately begin researching advanced thermal alloys, exotic materials, dynamic geometry exploitation. Costs will skyrocket. Exactly what the new era was designed to prevent. So Wednesday is not about Mercedes alone. It is about defining the philosophy of innovation in Formula One. Are we rewarding interpretation? Or restricting it? Are we encouraging engineering genius? Or enforcing uniformity? And depending on that answer, the sport will move in two completely different directions. But there is still one element that could tip everything. Because political pressure inside Formula One can sometimes be stronger than technical evidence. And several powerful figures are already pushing from behind the scenes. That pressure may decide more than the data ever could. And this is where the situation stops being purely technical. Because behind every regulation battle in Formula One, there is politics. And right now, the political pressure is enormous. Ferrari is not simply asking questions. They are demanding transparency. Fred Vasseur reportedly made it clear that there will be no private settlement. No quiet agreement. No confidential clarification hidden from the public. They remember 2019. They remember how their own engine situation was handled. And this time, they want a public verdict. A visible ruling. Equal treatment. That word is being repeated inside the paddock more than anything else. Fairness. Red Bull, meanwhile, has gone even further. Christian Horner is said to have accused the FIA of negligence for not identifying this earlier. Because if one manufacturer can exploit dynamic compression or fuel flow interpretation, then what exactly were the checks designed to prevent? And here is where another layer appears. Ford. Their new partnership with Red Bull for the 2026 era is built on a promise. Cost control. Sustainable innovation. Level playing field. If Mercedes has invested millions into exotic alloys and advanced microengineering to gain an edge, Ford sees that as a dangerous signal. Because once one manufacturer opens that door, the others must follow. And when manufacturers follow, budgets explode. Development races escalate. And the entire cost cap philosophy starts to fracture. Now imagine being Liberty Media. You are trying to sell the new era as stable, predictable, fair. And before the first race even begins, you are staring at a potential legal war between three of the biggest brands in the sport. This is not just a technical headache. It is a commercial risk. Sponsors do not like uncertainty. Manufacturers do not like instability. And fans do not like championships decided in courtrooms. That is why Wednesday matters so much. Because whatever the FIA decides will echo beyond Bahrain. If they ban the engine outright, Mercedes could challenge the decision legally. They could argue prior consultation. They could argue regulatory ambiguity. And that would drag the issue beyond the paddock, into public legal territory. If they approve it, Ferrari and Red Bull could protest every race result involving Mercedes-powered cars, creating a cloud over the entire championship. Neither outcome is clean.